Thank you everyone for attending. Good afternoon. Welcome to the second Leaders Lecture series of the fall semester hosted by the College of Engineering and Computing Sciences at New York Tech. Today, we would like to welcome Mr. Mathew Daus, the former NYC Taxi and Limousine Commissioner, currently serving as the Transportation Technology Chair at the City University of New York at City College. Today's topic is careers in transportation technology. Now, I would like to welcome the Dean of the College of Engineering and Computing Sciences, Dr. Beheshti.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is my pleasure to welcome you to the second session of the Fall 2023 Industry Leaders Talk Series, hosted by the New York Institute of Technology's College of Engineering and Computing Sciences. My name is Daus Beheshti, Dean of the College. This series is co-hosted by our college as well as the IEEE Region 1. Our audience today is composed of IEEE professional members as well as student members from across the Northeastern United States. In addition to the College of Engineering's current students, alumni, faculty, staff, and a number of distinguished guests. I would like to thank the College of Engineering's Dean's Executive Advisory Board, particularly its chair, Dr. Robert DeFazio, who has been instrumental in organizing this series. Today's industry leader presentation is titled Careers in Transportation Technology. The speaker is Mr. Mathew W. Daus, Esquire, Transportation Technology Chair at the City University of New York's CUNY Transportation Research Center, and a member of the Dean's Executive Advisory Board here at New York Tech. As the chair of the City University of New York's Transportation Research Center, Mr. Daus conducts research and continues to be extensively published as an expert in the ground transportation regulation and technology. As a CUNY Distinguished Lecturer for the past 9 years, he taught courses on transportation history, policy, sustainability for higher regulation and technology. Mr. Daus also continues to serve for the past 10 years as a president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators, IATR, a nonprofit education and advocacy peer group of government transportation regulators from around the world, promoting best regulatory and innovative practice. Without any further ado, I will pass it on to our speaker.
Thank you, Dean, for that kind introduction. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your leadership at the school. Nadia, Islam, and Jill, and the entire team that you have working with you. The partnership that we have with NYIT, in addition to serving on the board, for the advisory board, it goes way back. You know, we have held many events with NYIT. Our consortium of universities that we work with on behalf of the USDOT includes NYIT, and we're very, very thankful for this relationship. And it's very, very important that the students understand, you know, the world outside, you know, the campus, and in different niche industries and areas where there's opportunity for growth. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about, you know, very shortly, my career path, you know, how I ended up where I am and what the disruption is, and where things are going on in the marketplace, and what opportunities there are for, number one, you know, finding good, decent entry level and even, you know, executive positions in the technology transportation field, but also, you know, looking for the dual purpose, which we see, thankfully, among many Gen Zers and millennials, unlike when I was going to school, this desire to kind of save the world and to do big things and to help, you know, make our society more equitable, sustainable. There are jobs out there where you can work in technology and do all of these things, you know, not just make money and have a good career for yourself and your family, but also where you could actually spend time, you know, changing things and changing industries and making people's lives better. So, you know, I want to jump to a PowerPoint so it could bring things a little bit more to light. Today, we're going to talk about careers in mobility. And like the Dean mentioned, and thanks for that kind introduction once again, Dean, you know, I have a lot of hats. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a coder. I don't have this technical background expertise that you and your students have, but I'm just a lawyer. So I have a very different perspective. In fact, I teach engineering graduate students at City College, taught them for many years in policy topics, a topic that I think we don't get enough of. We have a lot of technical coursework in a lot of different colleges and universities, but what I specialize in is understanding how laws and regulations work, how industries are regulated, and how you can work for government and understand how policy is made, because those policies affect private businesses, and it's important to know how the world works, right? So the various hats that I have, I started my career in government as a lawyer, working as a human rights prosecutor in the city after doing some private sector work, and I ended up staying in government for over 20 years. I was the commissioner of the New York City Civil Service Commission for a while. I was also taxi commissioner and general counsel for many years. I was 14 years at that agency. It's an agency that regulates and licenses taxi cabs, green cabs, Uber, Lyft, paratransit vehicles, commuter vans, dollar vans, anything on four wheels that transports people within New York City. It's the largest agency that regulates the largest industry in the United States. It is a bold leader in using technology, both during my tenure, which started right before 9/11 and ended in 2010, and thereafter. The use of technology for government and for the transportation industry has a lot of different examples, and I'm going to get into some of that. So I ended up, making my way to government, and I left 12 years ago, and now I have three hats, like the dean mentioned. I am at the Transportation Technology Chair at the City University of New York, where we have $15 million we just received in federal funding to do research in equity in our region, which is New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. I'm also president now of the international group of TLC commissioners worldwide. So we educate, hold conferences, develop best practices in areas of transportation technology. And last but not least, I am a lawyer. I am partner and founder and chair of the transportation law practice at Windell's Marks. Our firm's been around since the 1800s. Point of interest, one of our early clients was Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, among other things, and we actually defended the patent on the light bulb against opposition. In addition to that, as you can see, I live and breathe transportation, not just teaching it or representing government servants that are in this space right now, in this tremendously disruptive space. But I also represent clients as a lawyer and as a consultant in every mode imaginable. And for those of you who are not familiar with transportation, when we talk about multimodalism, we're talking about different forms of getting people around. A taxi is a different mode than public transit and a bus. These are conveyances, and the package delivery industry has been booming, and we're going to talk a little bit about goods delivery as well. But primarily, my experience has been in representing companies and even work for governments that deal with licensure and regulation of those industries. And after I left TLC, and I left in 2010, that's when the world really, really changed. We all know what Uber is, right? My students all use it. It's something that really changed the transportation world. We've had very, very little technology improvements over the last 100 years or so. The taxi meter never changed. It's been the same technology. And even before Uber came along, one of the big things I did with Mayor Bloomberg was put those screens and GPS in the back of the cabs, which was the first time we ever had data available to figure out how much drivers were earning, to be able to return lost property for people, to get data on where the cabs are going in the city, so we could figure out where's the best place to put a taxi stand. These are things that we did during the Bloomberg administration, where we pushed the technology envelope very, very far. And then when I left, it really just got upended when Uber launched. And you may remember, for those of you who remember when they first came on the scene, Uber was very disruptive. In some cities, they operated without permits. They launched and turned the people who wanted better and quicker and more efficient service than taxi cabs were providing against the politicians, and really disrupted things for several years. And it was a big battle. I was actually on the other side of the battle. I was actually battling against Uber on behalf of both the government regulators and the industry. Now we've made up and we're friends, and we're doing good things together. Uber has become mainstream. But the reason I point them out is look at their business model. Uber started private equity investors getting very interested in this space. When they decided that they could use a smartphone, to order transportation, and Uber really perfected that, a lot of people started investing heavily in the private equity markets in all forms of transportation technology. And we'll get into some of them now. But this is kind of what started it all. Probably around 2011, 2012, they came on the scene. Many laws were upended, lawsuits were out there and are still out there about how they operate, but things have settled down. And I think they realized that something I say all the time is that the only form of profitable transportation that exists are high-end luxury limousines. Costs about $250 or $350 to go to the airport. That's how much you would need to pay in order to make sure that the driver has a living wage, that workers' compensation and all the different expenses that go along with transportation is actually profitable with a decent margin. Everything else is subsidized, or it's a very razor-thin margin for them to make money, including Uber and what they're doing with ride-hailing. The use of an app to get technology to deliver a vehicle is only as good as what the vehicle is charging, and they can't charge something that's more than the taxi fares or significantly more than the taxi fares, but because people won't pay it, they can't afford to. So everything is subsidized in this space still to this day. The public transit has been subsidized since the 70s. It's not profitable on its own. People don't want to pay more than $250 to get onto a subway. They can't sustain and afford to pay what it takes to take these modes. Same thing with Uber. Uber probably can't exist on just doing ride hailing. So what they did is they have all these different business models. They opened Uber Freight. They had Uber for Business, which provides executive ground transportation with the Uber Black series. They have Uber Eats, which picked up and really dominates the market in many ways during the pandemic. It really has been a very profitable endeavor for Uber. So Uber diversified their different business lines, because my main point is transportation is not profitable on its own. It needs to be subsidized in a lot of different ways. And that's an underlying theme I think you need to know. But the subsidies are not necessarily government subsidies. When I talk about subsidies, we're talking also about private sector subsidies. Like, for many, many years, drivers were paid a lot of money, and also passengers were paying less because private equity funds were subsidizing the Uber and the Lyft services that were out there. But they did change the world. There's a famous German saying called alles, right? So it's Uber alles. We actually did an NYU law school program about this when it was happening many years ago. And it's really created all these different areas of technology that focus on data, software, interconnectivity, and different industries now are being disrupted more than others. So the yellow taxi cab industry around the country was disrupted big time by Uber. We all know that. It became a more efficient way to get around, a safer way to get around, some might argue. And in the micromobility context, we see these vehicles on the street, these conveyances now, electric scooters, electric bikes. That industry has taken off. And what's the common denominator? They also have an app, right, that is used to take people around. Urban air mobility, we're going to talk a little bit about that. The concept of going to the skies, it is real. This is something where there's a lot of potential opportunities as well. Food delivery services, automated vehicles, driverless cars, electric vehicles, non-emergency medical transit, and something called mobility as a service. And we're going to go through them one by one, but let me explain some of the concepts behind mobility as a service. So mobility as a service is, I think it's going to come eventually to the US. It's here in some minor forms, but this is really the holy grail of technology in the transportation sector. Basically putting everything on one smartphone app. You can click on, I want the cheapest, the quickest, or the most sustainable way to get to work today, right? The app will basically connect seamlessly with one payment option to take you from your home to your place of work, migrating across different modes. What do I mean by that? It might tell you, walk 1 block to a bike share stand, take a bike to the subway, take the subway to your destination, get out of the subway and connect with a Lyft or an Uber or a taxi cab electronically. and you can go to your final destination. So when you live in a transportation desert, an area that is a suburban area, a two-fare zone, a place where you can't get a direct, efficient subway route point to point, you're usually taking that last mile or that first mile somewhere, right? And I think that's where mobility as a service comes in. Eventually, people are going to demand that they have less payment methods, that they don't have to go from a Metro card to an Oyster card. That, and you're already starting to see this. You know, people can go on the bus in London and they can just tap their credit card chip, right? We're going to end up eventually probably with chips in our bodies, but you know, for now, it's going to migrate to the phone. And some cities are experimenting with this now. Mobility as a service means just what it says. We're not concerned about what type of mode you're taking. You just want to get from point A to point B, and we want to utilize the ecosystem. And the problem that we have in the United States is that public transit, which is heavily subsidized, the buses, the subways, have always been treated differently than the industries that I've been involved in, you know, like the limos and the taxi cabs. The future is linking them together, and the future will link them together. It's just a matter of time. In Helsinki, you know, there's a project called Smile that I would take a look at if you're interested in this. The city of Pittsburgh has also put forward a mobility as a service system using mobility hubs, where you can actually go to a location where all the different options are available to you to go to your last mile. I would keep an eye on that project. That's really the first mobility as a service project we have. It's not complete. It doesn't include taxi cabs. It doesn't include all the modes I would love to see under it. The FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, also many years ago put a mobility on demand sandbox program in place where they started experimenting with using wheelchair taxis instead of the big vans that you see for the accessible transportation services. And they also started using first and last mile partnerships where they experimented in certain cities around the country with pilot program money to see how it works if the government would pay to subsidize your ride when you get off the subway and take that last mile or two home by using an Uber or a Lyft. It created a lot of issues, of course, in terms of how we manage data, because the way the laws are written in the United States is, you know, once the government gets their hands on any private data, it's potentially disclosable to third parties, competitors, and reporters, and whoever asks for it under the Freedom of Information law. So that's kind of an issue that's burning in the background. We don't have any true mobility as a service here. There are experiments in Europe. You have the WIM app in Helsinki. You have the Smile project in Vienna. I would keep an eye on these things as well as Pittsburgh, because I think in the next 5 to 10 years, the software and the integration that needs to take place between all these different modes is going to be something that the government needs to solve. And remember, this is something that's going to have to come from the government or be licensed by the government because it involves public transit. It's public linking with private transit, and there's going to need to be a platform that can take and integrate the APIs of Uber and Lyft and City Bike and the apps that are all, you know, operating these systems and dispatching these different vehicles and conveyances to you. It all needs to be under one roof, linked with public transit. So that's a bigger long-term thing. It's not really happening now. What is happening now, believe it or not, are driverless cars. And if you haven't been in one, there are places you can go. I've been in them. They actually work. The naysayers, you know, and maybe there's still a lot of skeptics out there. The best way for you to understand this is to go to San Francisco, go to Phoenix the next time you're there, and actually get in one and take it. You could download the Waymo app. Waymo is owned by Alphabet and Google. They have sophisticated technology, and they are already picking people up and giving them rides, just like Uber does in robo-taxis in Phoenix and San Francisco. And that is happening. I've been in these vehicles. I encourage you to do it because it is mind-blowing. It is raising the bar on safety and will save lives beyond what people could ever imagine. You know, I'm at a Vision Zero conference now. That's why I'm remote. I just gave a speech with as former TLC commissioner with the current TLC commissioner. We're talking about technology and Vision Zero and how we want to get to, as a Swedish policy that's now been adopted all throughout the US, zero traffic fatalities is where we want to go. And there's telematics and cameras out there that can help drivers drive more safely. But the ultimate holy grail here is a driver that does not exist, that is a computer, that is safe, that is designed not to be just a regular driver, but by by code is designed to be a defensive driver. If you get into one of these vehicles, it's like you took a defensive driving course. They're super cautious. They are not afraid to be a little bit aggressive if they need to, if it's safe. I was in a vehicle that went around traffic into opposing traffic when they were at a stalemate. And these are intelligent vehicles, and they have eyes inside their, around all around their head. They can see places where you and me as motorists can't see. They can see things on a map through their mapping technology, and in real time, 100 yards away, they can see someone on a skateboard or walking a dog that's not in the roadway, and they can figure out which direction it's anticipated that these objects are going to go. And they are very, very safe, but they also don't hold up traffic that much. And even in San Francisco, I was amazed when I got into a Cruise vehicle, which is owned by GM and Waymo, and the three big companies in the U.S. that are, going in this direction is the self-driving mode that Tesla has, Elon Musk. You have Cruise, GM, robotaxis, and you have Waymo. Those are the three big players. There's also shuttles out there, which is a more equitable service. You have Beep. You have a project called Trenton Moves getting underway for low-income communities where there can be shuttles that are subsidized where they drive themselves and multiple people can get on them at kiosks. These are the things that are going on right now around the country. It will come to New York at some point. It's a bit of a heavier lift, but some of these other states that have been more technology friendly, like Arizona, have been welcoming them for years now. And they're getting a lot of miles and a lot of traction, and they're getting better at what they do. And right now, there's been a lot of controversy that you may have seen in the paper about Cruise from GM having their permit pulled in opposition from some localities in California to a statewide vote that would allow the entire state to have cars without drivers picking people up for hire, just like they've been doing in San Francisco. I think some of the localities don't like the fact they can't control this, that the state's doing it. But be that as it may, the vote did pass, and Waymo, which is the leader in the pack, is expected to start rolling out all throughout the state of California, one city at a time. A little minor setback, which occurred recently, was Cruise had its permits pulled by the California Public Utilities Commission that regulates them. They seem to be back on track to try to fix some of the issues. There have been a few fatalities out there. There was one fatality in Tempe, Arizona, involving the Uber driverless vehicle years ago that caused a lot of stir and a lot of disenchantment with the industry. But as you can see, a couple of years went by and it bounced back. So I think there's going to be, unfortunately, some of these ups and downs, but the technology is real. It's here. It uses LiDAR and other sensors that are put into the vehicle. And there's also intelligent mapping that takes place when these cars go to a city. They map the nuances of the city, not just from the satellites. They're looking at the ground and pictures of the roadway. And they're testing themselves in different environments. Arizona is a bit of an easier environment. It's dry heat. The roads are a little bit more open. Try coming to a city like Buffalo or a city that has snow in it, and it becomes a little bit more complex. So the technology is not perfect, but it's getting perfect. And I do believe that it is going to be here to stay. It may not take over every aspect of transportation, but it's going to be one of the many modes, I think, that's going to happen over the next 10 years. And some of you may have heard hand in hand, about the concept of a connected vehicle. Now, what is that? Basically, they come in three flavors. Passenger to there's three types: V to I, V to P, and V to V. What does that mean? Vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, and vehicle to passenger. The roadway and the infrastructure, I'm talking about traffic lights, have sensors where the vehicles can talk to each other and determine how far away they are from one another. This is kind of separate from automated vehicles. Driverless cars do this already, right? This is putting sensors into a vehicle that allow them to communicate with other vehicles, to communicate with a passenger or a pedestrian that's on their phone, right? It could actually potentially be aware that you're crossing the street and you're texting on your phone, you're not looking. The car could actually be able to sense that and communicate and realize that there is a phone that's crossing that street. The other thing is vehicle to infrastructure. We have this on the FDR Drive right now. Vehicle to infrastructure is the vehicles being able to communicate with the traffic lights, and to understand and know when the light's going to turn, so that the vehicle itself could prompt you to slow down in manual mode. And at some point, this technology is going to be integrated with driverless car technology as well. The USDOT has had pilot programs around the country. New York City was selected and had $20 million from the USDOT to do this project, which is ongoing on the FDR Drive. And then the next mode is flying taxis. I know it sounds crazy, the Jetsons, people taking to the air, but we're kind of out of space on the ground. We have congestion beyond what we ever anticipated. People, even though they've been buying less cars, there still seems to be more on the road, especially in New York City in the Central Business District. We have congestion pricing coming soon, trying to solve the problem. But eventually, we're going to have to take to the skies, and it's already kind of happening. There are companies out there working on noise-free, multi-rotor conveyances or aircraft that are not just manned or by pilots, but also are automated, just like the driverless cars are. The FAA is and the USDOT is moving forward with standards to create an ecosystem where we can test this technology. China and Dubai, they're already doing it. I mean, they're stopping at the top of, they have helipads at the top of buildings. There's a use case for this in the emergency medical transport field, as well as organ transport, which has been a company called Blade in New York has been doing that with helicopters. The helicopters that are providing these services with a smartphone app for you to get to the airport in 5 minutes, which I kid you not, you can get to the airport in under 5 minutes if you go to the West Side Highway and get on a Blade. That the Blade is going to probably be replaced, with some of these newer technologies that are quiet, which don't upset the neighbors, because everybody complains about helicopters in the neighborhood. That's one of the big barriers. But Joby, for instance, has a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and in the industry we call that eVTOL, EVTOL. That's code for vertically taking off like a helicopter, noise-free, and going, wherever you need to go. There probably will be connections to airports in the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to see this grow even more quickly than driverless cars. And it will take probably some time to have these things take off at the top of skyscrapers and stuff like that. But for emergency medical transportation in rural areas of the country, as well as to airports, I think is where the use case is going to be. So this technology is coming. Electrification is here. There's billions of dollars that have been put out by the federal government to create charging infrastructure around the country, and the entire automotive industry is moving towards electric vehicles. These are plug-in electrics. There's a lot of technology surrounding the different charging stations and how they work, level 2, level 3. It's a whole world unto itself, but it is, as a policy matter, every city, every state is doing this, and there's plentiful jobs in this arena, for those who are interested in automotive technology and in energy and charging technology. And AI is here too, as you're all probably dealing with in your coursework. It's going to change the world. There'll probably be some regulatory limits on it, but AI is being used for a lot of these different things I just mentioned. AI is used for driverless cars. AI is being used for the flying taxis. AI is being used by some camera systems that are doing automated enforcement on the roads. In Miami and parts of the country, there are cameras that can intelligently determine by looking at a license plate what type of car is, who the owner is in real time, as opposed to somebody, a cop showing up on the side of this road and issuing a ticket. And summonses are being issued for violations, for red light and speeding and speeding violations with cameras. So when you look at the technology behind the cameras, that are being deployed by the cities, we're going to see a movement in that direction, because governments can't afford to hire traffic agents. It's not working. You're going to see more and more red light cameras, speeding cameras, and other applications to enforce the law on the roads. You're also going to see more and more telematics out there. Telematics is the concept of having the car's computer or the OBD port on the computer plugging into a system that looks at the driving behavior of people who are on the road, whether it's a FedEx driver or a taxi driver. And it has forward and rear facing cameras that look at the road 24/7, and also it can be turned on and off inside the camera. What does that mean for the insurance industry and safety? Is that as a lawyer, there are no trials anymore. When that camera is working, you can determine automatically who is at fault in a crash. And it also can prevent a crash because there are sensors and alarms and ways in which the systems can advise you on a catastrophic event that's about to happen. So some of these ADAS systems and some of these early warning detection systems started with these separate devices that were put in the vehicles, and now they're being incorporated into the OEMs and the manufacturer of these various cars. So pretty much many of the newer models of vehicles for all manufacturers have the ability to alert you to an oncoming vehicle, has eyes behind its head, so to speak. And these systems are going to get more and more sophisticated, and they kind of almost cross the line into going into a driverless car. Like Tesla has a self-driving mode, so in addition to all these bells and whistles where it can alert you to avoid a crash, it can even take the vehicle away from you and take control of it if you're asleep at the switch and or you're not able to react very quickly. So we're going to see more of that, and I also think we're going to see more of the industry moving towards things such as putting speed limits on the vehicles. People are looking to actually put technology in the fleet vehicles in New York City that would prevent people driving city-owned vehicles from going above a certain speed. You just cannot speed. So technology is going to kind of make things more safer on the roads. And it is a combination of telematics, the driverless cars, automated enforcement. That's kind of where the trends are and where they're going. And the last industry I'll mention that's being disrupted in a very, very big way is non-emergency medical transportation. There's two types of transportation for people who have disabilities. You could either, number one, use Access-a-Ride, as we call it in New York, where it's a subsidized service if you meet certain criteria to get around. That system doesn't work as well as it could. It needs better technology to dispatch and coordinate these rides. And there's also the non-emergency medical transportation field that deals with people that are taking trips to dialysis for non-emergency medical appointments, dialysis treatments, hospital work. These are federally subsidized transportation trips that the feds pay for if you're going to and from a Medicaid authorized service. So that industry is exploding right now with a brokerage model that's under attack. The brokers have existed for many years in both public and private paratransit services to basically be the buffer that dispatches the rides that come in. So they, like a typical broker would have a contract, let's say the MTA as a public transit agency, and they would have maybe 20 companies working for them with taxi drivers and livery drivers and so forth, and vans, and they coordinate all those activities through a software and a dispatching system. That industry is being disrupted right now because Uber is coming in with Uber Health, trying to come up with a better model. And there's about I kid you not, 5 or 10 big software companies that are trying to have a more integrated system, because transportation companies typically have multiple systems. They have a system for billing, they have a system for dispatching, they have a system where they white label, as they call it, an app, where the app has to communicate with the dispatching system. Some calls are taken over the phone, some are on the web, some are on an app. It's kind of all over the place. So the coordination that you need to have in just one company, could have multiple layers. There may be a different technology that deals with the billing for those services after the fact. What this industry is doing now is trying to consolidate all of those software services under one roof, and they're also looking to displace the current brokers that are out there. So that industry is being disrupted. So if I had to figure out where I would be in 5 to 10 years, if I wanted to start my career anew and go into technology transportation, I would say in the short term, believe it or not, the short term, it's driverless cars, and working on a lot of these different softwares, whether it be in the NEMT field or else, or the mobility as a service field. And long term, we're going to have mobility as a service and flying taxis, and the world is going to become smaller, believe it or not. I think there's all these different companies doing different things. As time goes on, they're all going to be integrated because passengers and the public are going to demand it, number one, and that's the only place that we have to go. We've already kind of exploited this thing to the hilt. This really was the one big disruptive force that caused all of these changes that we're seeing now and made an otherwise boring field that wasn't doing anything for years just explode with private equity funding and interesting jobs. And that's where we get to the career section of this, and I'll end with this. There are tons of jobs out there for NYIT students. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I'm a lawyer. And my career path was an interesting one. I went to the government, and then I came out and started making money and teaching and giving back and doing what I did. And I kind of just followed, not just where I wanted to go, but I kept my eyes and ears open about opportunities, and sometimes you can pursue something. It could be the wrong way you're going. You may have an idea and it's just not going right. You always have to, as when you got into the workforce, number one, get a good mentor. Anyone who's successful in business or politics hooks up with somebody who's more experienced, who takes them under their wing. You need to find a mentor, and you could find and start that by going to, the department and the dean and the folks at NYIT who can help you with career advice. But more importantly, if you want to get into a certain sector or just experiment, it's very, very important that once you decide that you like what you're doing, that you actually try to find some role models or mentors who can help you with your career. Because all the people who are successful, in any field do that. Number two, keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities. You may be doing something that you think you like, and there may be something else that you might like better, or you may be unhappy in a particular job that you take at first. But it's an adventure, it's an experience. You don't want to, the people that have failed miserably, in my opinion, are the people that I went to high school with, that basically said, I'm going to be a doctor no matter what. I want to be a doctor, and I'm going to follow that path. And they realize once they go to medical school, they get out and they don't want to be a doctor, right? So when did they make that decision that they don't like what they're doing? You kind of have to start out like it's a journey. And I didn't know I'd be taxi commissioner. I'm a musician. I want to be, a full-time musician. My parents talked me out of it. I ended up, following somebody who I respected and ended up working for by happenstance. When I was working at Human Rights, I ended up getting introduced and called for an interview to be counsel to the commissioner of TLC. She basically started another agency. I was working for her then. And then when she was appointed commissioner, she asked me to go with her. I didn't know anything about taxis. I didn't care about transportation. When I got there, I just liked working with her. And she gave me a lot of responsibility, and I grew and I started to learn the subject matter. And like any field or specialty, like law, medicine, even engineering, urban planning, it's all about specializing. If you want to be a valuable, high-paid consultant many, many years from now, or if you want to have a good, lucrative career, or even work for government, it's all about specializing. It's all about having a niche that you can fit into, that you understand it better than anybody else. And there's a great book that I recommend that everybody read. It's a philosophy book. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And the book is about a guy and his son who basically take a motorcycle, ride around the country. They have a lot of adventures, but the motorcycle breaks down and they put it back together one by one. And the whole concept of Zen is to become one with the motorcycle. They understood how it worked. They put it together, took it apart again, and they did it so many times that they became one with the machine. So that's like when you reach a point in your career, like I have, where you pretty much know almost everything that there is to know. You're still always learning, but when you reach a point where you know everybody in the space and you know most things, you become very confident. You become very engaging. You become very valuable as a resource, and you really understand what you're doing. And there's a great amount of satisfaction that comes with this once you find your niche or the area that you want to go into. So my advice to all of you, okay, even though you're not lawyers like I am, is to go out there and to start, take your first job, take a chance. Maybe it's not what you wanted to do, but see how it goes and always be curious and explore, and then look at other opportunities. You know, part of the problem that we have now is that the workforce is fickle, that they take it to the ridiculous extent of leaving a job every year. That's not the right way to go either. In my opinion, as an employer, and people, I've probably interviewed 10,000 people for all I know, thousands and thousands of people in my career. You know, what I look for is somebody who's enthusiastic. I look for somebody who cares about what they're doing, who's articulate and writes well and can talk. And these are skills that I don't see, unfortunately, enough of in general in higher education. And I spend a lot of time with my students getting them to write better and speak better, and I force them to. And you'd be surprised what you're capable of when you realize, you know what, you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you're a tree falling in the forest, when that CEO calls you into their office and you've got 2 seconds to shine to make or break your career, or you send an email to the CEO, you know, who you have had no interaction with in your company, or to the mayor, and you have grammar and spelling mistakes, your career is dead on arrival, no matter how smart and good you are. So learn to write well, take it seriously, because a lot of people are not these days in the last couple of generations. You know, learn how to speak well. Force yourself to speak in class. You know, you need to be able to articulate even the most complicated of subjects. Even if you're not a people person, you need to be able to speak well, write well to a certain extent. But more importantly is network. Get out there and go to trade associations and educate yourself. Meet different people, because the next opportunity is going to come not by you sitting behind your desk all day plugging away at your computer, but when you have that first job, put it on LinkedIn and get out there and network. And that's how you will be successful. And more importantly, that's how you will become happy. When you find that thing that you like to do the most, and you know that even if it's not the thing, maybe it's the second or the third thing on your list, right? But when you get to know it really, really well, you get a level of confidence and you become one with your work. And you spend most of your time working during your lifetimes, right? So you might as well figure out something that you can enjoy doing and actually be motivated by it, not just, you know, dragging your behind to work every day and saying, you know, I got to go to work again. You know, it's a big part of what we do. It's a big part of our lives, and self-actualization and realization. I think it's important for everybody to really like and find that thing that they like to do. It may not be the number one thing that you wanted for. If it was up to me, I'd be jamming with the Rolling Stones right now with my guitar somewhere. But I still play my music on the side, and I'm happy. But my parents gave me the best advice. They basically said, don't come home. You're not going to be able to sleep here in 5 years if you can't find a job if you're a musician. Now, I made enough money that I tell my kids, you know, you can do whatever you want, right? But I didn't have that luxury, but they were 100% right. You know, you got to kind of look at where the opportunities are, because, you know, the first priority is you got to be able to sustain yourself and make a living. If you can't make a living, you're making a real big career choice that I want to go to government, or I want to become a musician or an artist. You know, those are career choices. But, you know, I think most people that are happy are the ones that are able to, you know, do some public service and maybe start their career out, maybe doing some good things, not making too much money. And then eventually when you want to have a family, if you decide to go down that road or have things in life, it's good to make some money. There's nothing wrong with it. And you can do both. I mean, I'm still doing things that, you know, through my clients and through my work to help others. And, you know, that's kind of like my viewpoint on all these things, and my words of advice to folks that are just getting out there into the sector. And, you know, the job opportunities are there. I mean, just take some of these companies I just threw out there, and just to get a handle on what's out there and see what type of jobs they're posting for. You know, there's machine learning architects at Waymo, electrical process engineers. Joby is hiring the flying taxi company engineers at various levels. Even Curb, the taxi app in New York City, you know, they have positions where they require coders and other people that even have business degrees. I know folks, there's a great business program at NYIT, and I think that's one of the you know, the areas that you should focus on too. I mean, not everybody's a coder or an engineer or a computer engineer. There are other jobs and degrees that we have coming out of the college, and there's something for everybody in this sector. They need good, strong technology people. They need good salespeople. But just dipping your toe into this universe, if you have any interest in mobility, there's great job opportunities, and it's only going to get better. So that's kind of my view of the world. Happy to take any questions, and I'm happy to do this lecture again. I did it about a year or so ago. Had some great questions from students and tried to help some of them offline. So I'm happy to do that again. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them and follow up with you after the speech.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Daus, for an amazing discussion. And yes, we're going to start taking a few questions, but I believe we have our first question is by Nadia.
So thank you so much, Matt. Actually, it was absolutely a fascinating presentations for our engineering students, and we appreciate your time and knowledge. So on behalf of actually our engineering students, I would ask these questions to you. Could you provide some insights into the internships, co-op programs, or entry-level position, which you think would offer valuable experiences for engineering students who seek to start their careers in transportation, mobility, and technology sector?
Well, that's a good question, Nadia, and thank you. Happy to share the spotlight with you anytime. I think a great place to start is an incubator program. I mean, NYIT has an incubator program. I would go visit it and go for a tour and check it out and see what companies are there. I mean, the startups are the most fun. It's hard work. A lot of my startup clients work around the clock. They have meeting after meeting. It's a little stressful. It's a smaller, more dynamic environment. A lot of students like that environment, especially the younger generations. It's not for everybody, right? But that's one thing I would do to kind of explore the space. A lot of these incubators have technology startup companies that get going. And I would go to some of the conferences too. We have a conference with the regulators, but there are other great conferences that you can go to. There's an entity known as AASHTO, which is really all the state departments of transportation. They're always looking for engineers, civil engineers. The private companies are more looking for, software engineers and people who know how to code. But there's a wide variety of jobs there. So, and these companies are always hiring, and they're hiring in New York too. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, but you kind of have to dip your toe in the water and get out there. And, I'm happy to make any introductions like I have in the past, or as job opportunities become available, bring them to NYIT and post them in the, in the career office, and and see if we can tap into some NYIT talent.
Thank you so much, Matt. If I can further down my questions, because I don't see other questions being asked while our audience probably was preparing for asking more questions. One is that, you mentioned about a book, and a few people ask about the name of the book. Would you be?
Yes, it's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's kind of a philosophy type of book, but yeah, it's a good one. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other good books out there about the space, about transportation, but this is more of a book that it really moved me, and I can get you the information on how to find it.
That would be great.
Yes, if you don't mind, maybe typing the name of the book, because there was a couple of questions about the book. So if you don't mind typing it in the message section, so everyone can read them.
I'm glad that I'm turning people onto it. Yeah, the author is Robert Persig, and I'll type it into the chat box.
Thank you. One last question from me, and I'll just leave the stage after that. I know that you mentioned about the soft skills that, students need not to be shy. They need to have public speaking. They have to better writing skills. They need to network a lot. So while emerging technologies continue to shape transportation, what interdisciplinary skills do you think are crucial for engineering students? We have computer scientists in the room, we have mechanical engineer, we have data scientists. So how do they enter into this dynamic industry, you believe?
That's another good question. The data, there's a lot of job opportunities out there for data scientists. I mean, even like Bloomberg LP, right? Like the Bloomberg News Service. Like, data science is a very, very broad category, and there's tons of jobs. All of my clients have data scientists working. I have data scientists working for me. That crunch numbers and data about transportation, because my clients want to know, answers to questions, about how mobility is working, and mobility is a very data-driven, industry. Everybody looks at the data. The public transit agencies are looking at how quickly the trains run on time, how many people are taking the trains. That probably has the most wide variety of skill sets that can be used in every one of these companies, right? Data science, app companies. There are companies that specialize in data. There are nonprofits that have, like the Open Mobility Foundation. And there are entities out there that are really pushing the envelope on mobility data, because that is something that has remained within most private companies until now. Now there's a movement afoot for government to share that data with private industry, and to get to mobility as a service, as some of these concepts I was talking about. That data has to be shared. And how do you share it with one another safely and securely? How do you write the code for the different systems to talk to each other? There's tons of jobs in all of the things I mentioned doing that. And the basic data science job is probably the most, has the most wide variety of potential. On the mechanical engineering side, there's a wide variety of jobs in the industry of driverless vehicles and flying taxis and some of these newer, these newer technologies that are out there. So, I would encourage people to go to some of the companies' names that I mentioned and just go to their websites and see what type of jobs they have to get a flavor for it. But, those types of engineering skills are in high demand. Waymo and some of these other companies, they pay very, very well. It was a project I was working on where they were trying to basically figure out what the insurance should be for these driverless cars. So they have actuaries and data scientists crunching numbers. All of these companies are crunching numbers for one reason or another. So that's a great place to go if you're a data scientist. And let's not shortchange the government, Nadia. I mean, the government has a tremendous amount of positions, urban planners and architects and civil engineers. They've all migrated to these transit agencies where they all collect data and analyze data to make policy. Where are we going to put a bike lane? Where are we going to put a stop sign? There's data that's being collected and analyzed by the city from a wide variety of sources. And, in transportation, if you want to specialize as a data scientist, the world is your oyster. That's one of the areas where we're just going to get more and more potential, and there's more and more job growth. And as you climb up the corporate ladder or the government ladder, we have chief data scientists, and that mayors are hiring now. The governors and mayors in a lot of cities are, hiring chief data officers. That's how important data is and becoming to government. Remember, we tackled the crime problem in New York City by something called CompStat. Unless you can get data, we weren't able to turn New York City around many, many years ago when it was suffering from high crime, until they started looking at the data on where the crime was occurring. The data is so important to public policy. It's so important to this mobility industry. It's not even funny. So that's, I think, the top tier job that's more versatile is having a data science degree.
Mr. Daus, we only have a few minutes left. In short, because there is this question, there was a question. What are your thoughts about renewable energy, hydrogen cars, solar cars, and so on, and mobility and the mobility industry? We only have a few minutes, if you don't mind answering that question, and that would be our last.
Sure. No, it's a good question. For when I started out in this space, it was really unsettled what type of energy and fuel that we'd be using. I remember debating at conferences, is it going to be hydrogen fuel cell? Is it going to be compressed natural gas? Is it going to be propane? Is it going to be just pure electrification? And then, then the hybrid electric movement came along, right? And Mayor Bloomberg and I mandated hybrid electric taxi cabs. Then the recession came, and the recession caused people not to focus on the green movement for a long time. Now the green movement is back politically. There's a lot of money being devoted towards EVs, but the two areas I think of renewable energy in this industry that I would keep an eye on are hydrogen fuel cell and electrification. Because of government policy and grants and infrastructure money that the president and Congress have made available, it's kind of a done deal that we're going from hybrid electrics now to electric plugins. Everybody's doing it, and it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's going to take some time, but electrification is a done deal. Plug-in electric. Hydrogen fuel cell, the Bush administration spent a lot of money on that, Department of Energy. It's still very viable. And, remember, one of the biggest pollutants is jet fuel. Everybody talks about, reducing carbon emissions on the ground. Jet fuel is a big problem, and they're working on different alternative fuels to power jets. So I think hydrogen fuel cell, solar is important. Solar will be part of the equation, but it's not going to be a driving force. The solar energy could be used for things like, powering parking meters and different things. But so there's a use for it. But I would have to say pure electrification, hydrogen fuel cell, and then solar. And propane, there's the safety issues of propane, and clean diesel is really a fossil fuel. So I wouldn't count that in. The compression natural gas movement has gotten a big setback. It got some steam when they started fracking, and now it's settled down, and it's less polluting, but again, it's still a fossil fuel. They're all fossil fuels. So I wouldn't focus on CNG or propane as much. I'd say hydrogen fuel cell, solar, and of course electric.
Well, thank you very much for the interactive discussion. We now would like to welcome back Dean Beheshti to the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Daus, for the great presentation. Thank you all for participating in this event. My thanks go to colleagues who made this event happen, Dr. Robert DeFazio, Assistant Dean Jane Felici, and the College of Engineering staff, Ms. Jill Rogers. Please tune in for the next talk, as it will be advertised through the same channels you learned about this talk. Have a great afternoon.
Again, thank you. And please join us for our next talk scheduled for December 7th. For more information, of course, you can find it on our website, nyit.edu. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.